Welcome to everyone joining. Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Schuitenmaker. I'm representing Holland Circular Hotspot and I will be your moderator during this session. Thank you for being here. I see that people are still dropping in. So yeah, please feel free to keep doing so. In the meantime, we will start because we have only 1.5 hour maximum and then this webinar is done already. So let's proceed. Today, we're going to discuss circular construction. It's such an important topic. Michelle, can you please do the next slide? Thank you so much. And one slide further, please. So circular construction is a super important topic. If you take into account that the total construction sector consumes around 60% of the world's consumed raw materials, the global share of greenhouse gas emissions from the construction value is estimated around 53%, and much of which is attributed to the heavy materials that is consumed by the sector. So the environmental impact of the sector, looking at buildings and infrastructure, will be huge if we keep building the way that we are at the moment. And as almost 70% of the world's population is expected to live in urban areas by 2050, we need to make the construction sector more sustainable. Otherwise, we can't reach the climate goals. Next slide, please, Michelle. Because today we discuss opportunities in our neighboring countries. Many actions are taken at EU level. For example, the renovation wave, recovery funds all over Europe are being pumped into construction developments. But let's dive into the topic of circular construction with some of the experts in the field. So today we have Vincent Gruijs from the transition team Circular Construction Economy. We have Jessica Rijs-Leffers from Rijkswaterstaat. You will see how Sustainer and Arcades are leading the way as front-running companies, but you will also hear local perspectives from Terence Speyer from the UK Embassy, the Netherlands Embassy in the UK, from Willemijn Brakenhoff from the Netherlands Embassy in Belgium. You will also hear from Heiman van Praag and Marcus Colliège, the regional business development team of the Nordics and the Baltics, and also from Arnaud Humberg-Droog, Executive Director at Valdelia, but he's also a member of the bureau at ORE, which is one of our sister hotspot organizations located in France. So if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please feel free to use the chat. I hope it works now. I hope that one of my colleagues can check quickly because I just got a side note that it didn't. But please try to use your chats. I see that that it's working really well. We will have a Q&A at the end, but if we can have some discussion during the webinar, I'm open to it. So just use it and we will try to talk about it right away. Next slide, please. So I already told you that I represent Holland Circular Hotspot, and I would like to quickly tell you something about what we do. So our mission is to pave the way for circular market opportunities. And together with partners, we support internationalization of circular solutions. This we do in several ways, and mainly by creating an international stage for Dutch circular solutions, knowledge, and experience. And we do this with partners, like specifically in this case for circular construction. We have been working in 2 teams, one specifically focused on circular buildings, one specifically focused on circular infrastructure. And in this team were, next slide please, the Dutch transition team, Circular Construction Economy. You see Vincent Gruijs here, he will be there in a second. I also want to mention that the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management is an important partner in this project. Rijkswaterstaat, the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations, TNO and Arcades. And we also work together with the Rebel Group. So Vincent Gruijs, you see him here in the screen. He's the chair of the Circular Transition Team, Netherlands Transition Team, Circular Construction Economy. And he will go into the importance of international market development, and he will give an example of how we together support the internationalization of Dutch innovations. So, Vincent, I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I look a bit lighter on the picture. That has to do with the shading in my room. Apologies for that. Indeed, maybe Michelle, you can put up the first slide of the presentation. Yeah, as chair of the transition team for circular construction economy, me and my team, we try to stimulate the transition, obviously, and particularly for us in the construction economy, but that is a part of a much wider agenda in the Netherlands to create a fully circular economy in 2050, which we already know is very ambitious. Even now, we think 2050 is already getting closer and closer. And of course, we focus as a transition team mostly on the transition in the Netherlands, but that doesn't mean we don't attach a lot of importance to international cooperation and exchange. And actually, I think that is crucial. And I will illustrate that with two hopefully very simple examples. Maybe Michelle, next slide. Yeah. The first example is from my own practice, as I'm also a professor at Delft University of Technology, and we have been working for a couple of years on developing a prototype for a circular kitchen. So a circular kitchen is a kitchen that's very easy to construct, but also to deconstruct and to reuse parts of the kitchen without having to replace the whole kitchen. And we noticed that even in the development of this prototype, we were very dependent on international suppliers. For example, if you do one click, Michelle. Yeah, for example, for the plywood, let's say the more sustainable material to make up the boards, the cupboards, the drawers of the kitchen, we had to look for international suppliers, but also for these smart connectors, which make it very easy just to basically create a plug-and-play kitchen. You can click the fronts of the drawers out of it, click new ones in, and it makes it very easy, but they're not supplied in the Netherlands. And also, during the development of this prototype, the Dutch kitchen producer, which we worked, was taken over by an international company. And that actually, to be honest, created a bit of a delay because we had to, let's say, scale up the ambitions from a Dutch company to an international company, which created its own challenges. But I think we created a nice prototype in the end. Now another, I think if you do want to click, yeah, thanks. It's a very straightforward example. If you want to reuse materials, create a reloop, so to say, even in a small country like the Netherlands, it's almost a 4-hour drive from the north to the south. So for example, if you want to use materials from in Maastricht, it might not be best to look at Groningen, which is completely up north, but maybe to look towards Brussels or maybe Keulen. And that saves a lot of diesel being used by trucks to transport those materials. So basically, that is why we support also the international cooperation. It's really important to create these international supply chains. And that's why we also supported the brochures. I think one of them is already linked in the chat, but made a short view on the next slide, Michelle. Yes, there they are, two wonderful brochures, one focusing on the circular infrastructure, very aptly titled The Road Towards a Sustainable Future, and the other one more recently focusing on the buildings, constructing a sustainable future. And it's also why I'm very happy with webinars like this. I think they can really help to create in a way the international cycle, the international circle for circularity. So I'm also looking forward basically to what the other panelists have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And I think I can speak for the both of us, and I think all partners involved, that we're very proud of these publications and how well they are being received in international networks. So these publications are a good example of how we try to give an international stage to the solutions that we offer from the Netherlands, but also to show how we are or what direction we're trying to take the Netherlands.
Yeah.
One question for you, Vincent. The Dutch transition team, it stimulates the creation of the conditions for acceleration of a circular construction economy, which is, of course, as well as infrastructure, it's also buildings. But what, in your view, would be important conditions on an international level?
Yeah, one thing I think that became clear from the examples, that's just to also create the mindset, not only within Dutch companies, but internationally, because we are depending on that international supply chain. But another thing I think that's also very important is to get a common understanding of what we understand with circularity and actually what we want to achieve. For example, when we look at sustainability, particularly in the building sector, we often still think of energy efficiency, meaning reducing CO2 emissions during the use of buildings. But that often neglects that a lot of emissions are also created through the construction activities, which in part happen to make the buildings more energy efficient. So this illustrates that we really need to look holistically at the environmental impacts of our construction activities and all the products that are being created to facilitate that. And also, basically, as a transition team in the Netherlands, most fundamentally, we see circular economy as a means to create an environmental friendly construction industry. So it's not a goal in itself, but it means we need to look at that internationally in the same way if we want to make sure that products from one country also meet the standards of another country.
So we touch upon this also a little bit also in the brochure. So if anyone is interested to learn more about it, I would for sure recommend you to dive in the brochure, especially the building one mentions this. Do you know, Vincent, if our neighboring countries also have similar circular transition teams for the built environment?
I don't think there's an exact copy, but maybe you shouldn't have an exact copy because every country has its own specifics and politics work just slightly different in every country as well. But I see many initiatives also in neighboring countries to stimulate the circular economy. So I think that will also help to create that more international economy.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Vincent. I want to go into another one of our involved partners in this subject that mainly focuses on infrastructure within the construction sector, namely Rijkswaterstaat. And Rijkswaterstaat is here today in the person of Jessica Reis-Leffers, and we will have a short conversation about the role that Rijkswaterstaat actually has in this transition and also in creating business opportunities for collaboration between countries. So, Jessica, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me.
I think it would be nice to close the presentation for a second, so we have the real Jessica in the screen. Yeah, nice to see you. So, could you tell us something about Rijkswaterstaat's role, looking at international collaboration and business opportunities?
Yes, definitely. I think most of you know that Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands is the largest infrastructure provider, and we are therefore responsible for a very significant part of all material flows. I don't know if I should mention it, but it has already been mentioned. We are responsible for a very big environmental impact. And talking about the material flows again, most of them are international, right? And we are dependent on them. And many other economies, not only the Netherlands or not only Rijkswaterstaat. So with regards to international cooperation, it is essential for us to realize our ambitions and to make the transition towards a circular infrastructure sector faster and more effectively, right? And we all know that the way towards a circular economy is not one that is only focusing on the national level. We need each other So we are always aiming for international collaboration, and also because, and especially now, there are a lot of policies being developed at the European level that are important for this specific sector, but also for the construction sector in a whole.
Okay, so that gives us an idea of the role indeed, but how do you actually accelerate this transition?
Well, since the launch of the European Green Deal in 2019, we have been very active at the European level. We have been working on European policy advocacy, and you would think, what, Rijkswaterstaat start working on this? Yes, we are the executive policy, the policy executive agency of the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. So we are doing this kind of things. And we have been drawing a lot of attention to the role of infrastructure in bringing about this circular and climate neutral economy, especially because infrastructure is not very well included in the new policy development. So we have been exploring also measures that are needed to include infrastructure in these policy developments, which are so important for us. Otherwise, later they will be developing policies that are applicable to the construction sector, but not really applicable to the infrastructure. So you see, like this difference, or like it's like a conflict of interest, more or less. But we are also working on trying to create coalitions with other countries and organizations, but also the private sector, so that we can form a stronger voice in Europe, and thereby also enable that the transition towards a circular infrastructure does not lag behind. And we have also been advocating for an integrated approach, whereas we are both looking at the buildings and infrastructure sector all together, because we are talking about the very same supply chains, almost the very same market parties. So we have to do that together.
Okay, and looking at opportunities for collaboration, especially for Dutch entrepreneurs, what action do you take to increase these international opportunities? Because I know you've been active on that recently as well, also together with us. So maybe you can tell something about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think not only in the Netherlands, but in throughout Europe, there are a lot of national infrastructure replacement and renovation projects currently underway, right? And these have could have a very substantial environmental impact if not done in a more circular or climate neutral way. But that also opens up business opportunities for our Dutch entrepreneurs. But the question is, like, how can we align our ambitions? How can we align our policies to enable that other countries, and not only the Netherlands, are implementing circularity measures in their projects? And these are questions that we are working on. And maybe to be a little bit more precise, we have had a trade mission to the Flemish, to Belgium in May, and that mission focused on the construction sector, so buildings and infrastructure. And there we felt that there is a urgency for collaborating also on this infrastructure provider level, right? So I think that all infrastructure providers should work together to also open up opportunities for Dutch entrepreneurs and for all European entrepreneurs. And another project that we envisage to do is a exploration in Germany. We are talking with our counterparts in Germany, and we will soon also explore opportunities for collaboration with our neighboring our neighboring country. I'm not sure whether you know about this, but there is a European Confederation of Infrastructure Providers, and there we are also constantly, drawing or asking for more attention for circular infrastructure, and thereby we also open up opportunities for the businesses here and there. So that's more or less what we are doing at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. In the meantime, me directing to the audience, if you have any questions for Jessica, please write them in the chat. We will have Willemijn Brakenhoff later. She's from the Netherlands Embassy in Belgium. She can also answer some questions about the trade mission that Jessica just mentioned. You won't be here for the Q&A, I know. So maybe you can share some tips for entrepreneurs with burning questions about Rijkswaterstaat's possible support after the webinar. So maybe they don't have the question now, but later. What should they do?
What should they do? Well, I'm aware that there is a little bit of how to say. I'm not sure which words to choose. But I would definitely invite them to also talk to us about this. We have a huge network. We are also we have very big ambitions for international collaboration. And oftentimes in the infrastructure sector, the infrastructure providers are playing a very important role, right? So you can always come to us and ask us on what we are working, and we can always connect you with our connections with our network, but also include you in this whole trajectory, because at the end we want to close our value chains, and we all need to do that together. So please reach out to us, and I will be more than happy to help you out.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution, Jessica. We will talk soon, definitely. Okay, we proceed quickly. You can still ask your questions to Jessica in the chat if we can. If she won't be here anymore to answer it in the chat, we will see. Make sure that it gets to her. I want to give you a quick overview of the 5 countries that we're discussing today. So in the past couple of months, we've been looking at existing written pieces about Germany, Belgium, France, the UK, and the Nordics. And we dove into what's happening there at the moment. How do they match with what we have to offer, looking at solutions that we have in the Netherlands from a circular perspective, of course. And I will give you a quick overview. Keep in mind that this is what we found in existing material, but not the newest ones, because, for instance, the UK and Belgium have been very active in the last couple of months on these topics. So they will dive probably a bit more deeper in it later, but I will give you a quick overview before we proceed. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for Germany, what we see is that they do have a national CE policy, but there is no overall policy of circular economy for the regional. Sorry, there's there is a regional CE policy for Bavaria. But also for Hessen, Baden-Württemberg region have their own policies. So if you look at circular materials, southern Germany is very interested in using lignin and renewable resources in asphalt, and is one of the leaders in eco-innovation amongst EU states. Looking at capacity building, they do not have a dedicated implementation plan yet towards environmental regulation and to build capacity for that. But if you look at investments, they have quite some investments in construction. If you look at a couple of years ago, At the moment, circular economy was not top priority, in construction was not top priority, but I do know that there are some developments going on also within the embassy. I think starting from the end of the year, we will be able to say a bit more about that. And perhaps they can also share something with us, with, for instance, an update of the country page that we have. Not specifically on construction, but specifically on circular economy in Germany. You can find a lot of information on the country page. So if someone can please share that in the chat, that would be really interesting for the participants, I would think. Can we please go to the next slide? Yeah, so looking at Belgium, they do have a national CE policy and a national circular economy strategy, which was set up in 2014. Mainly focused on towards zero waste. And they have several green deals. There's also regional CE policy in Brussels, Flemish and the Walloon region. If you look at circular materials, we saw that Belgium scored lower than the EU 27 average in the Eco Innovation Scoreboard. But I believe that is not the latest update. So let's check later with Willemijn. The digitization and data management, the Belgian federal government has continued to support the digital transformation of organizations within the framework of Digital Belgium Action Plan. So this is something that they are very interested in, it seems. And they've been investing quite a lot in mobility investments. I have to say, this is a really short summary. We will have some more extensive reports on our country pages soon. Can you go to the next one, please, Michelle? Let me see. Yeah, we see that Wales and GLA, I think that Glasgow are leaders in circular economy construction. If you look at the materials that in the circular, from a circular perspective, you see that they've been building with wood, reclaimed timber, but also biomimicry in buildings. Preservation and regeneration is also a focus, and they talk about greening cities. So interesting to mention, but perhaps Terence will also mention this, is that often we see in these European countries that they are working on circular economy or interested in working circular economy, but it's not always the same wording that they use. So for instance, zero net targets, net zero targets, sorry, or green targets, slightly different wording. But if you look at it in depth, then you can see that circular solutions fit very well. So we see in the UK also quite some investments in green homes, decarbonization of it, and investments flowing in renovation. Much retrofitting and decarbonization in existing building stock is a priority there, and there are programs and investments available for it. Construction and demolition waste is a major problem, and they lack now data management technologies, and material passports and so on can be solutions for the UK. Next slide, please. Yes, then we have France. I see that the country pages are also shared in the chat, which is really nice. They have an anti-waste law, which is very interesting for the use of circular materials. They're mandating the use of bio-based materials in new built environments, and wood is seen as a primary material. Short circuit loops are also part of the focus. And if you look at capacity building, there are skilled labor shortages. They don't have a solution for that yet, so that can also be interesting. And digitization should be a solution for it. So if you look at investments, you see that they're quite big investments. I see 9 billion euros for the thermal renovation of buildings, 4.1 billion for infrastructure renovation. So you see that there are big investments made in the infrastructure subsector. There's also a sector push for adopting digital transformation, which is also quite an interesting opportunity for Dutch companies, as we have quite some innovations in the Netherlands that are quite far in the digital transformation already. And energy inefficiency is big. The heating supply is still mainly fossil-based, so it can also be an interesting opportunity to find collaboration in. And there is a major need for innovation if you look at thermal retrofitting. Or we could, of course, fill in the need. There's looking at biomaterials and local loops. They are also very high on the agenda. Please, the next one, I think the next one is the last one, and the Nordics one, which is, of course, which we focused on Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. What we see is that all these countries have a national CE policy, but they don't have regional CE policies. Building with wood is already quite well developed, and eco-innovation scores for Sweden, Denmark, and Finland are higher than the EU average. Digitization and data management, there's really high interest in the Nordics for that. And investment, there is quite high enthusiasm in investments in both building and the infrastructure sector. So I'm really eager to hear about that later from our Nordics team that will be here in the webinar. For circular procurement, there are also opportunities to collaborate more together. Can we see the next slide, please? So here it starts with topics and with the countries where we give a general idea of what topics fit in what country. This is just a summary of what I just mentioned. A big issue is that not all countries use the same wording, so that's really interesting in trying to get your feet on the ground, of course, in those countries. And later we will go into the local perspectives from France, Belgium, and UK, and the Nordics. But first we have two entrepreneurs that are already working on circular business in one or more of the European countries mentioned, and they will share their experiences. So this should be really exciting to hear about. Dingena, we have here with us today, Dingena Verkerk from Arcades and Henry Roberts from Sustainer. I would like to give the floor first to Dingena. She is program lead circular construction at Arcades, which is a leading global design and consultancy organization in the natural and built environment. Dingena, the floor is yours. Dingena will share her own presentation, so I think she needs rights to do that.
Let me see, because I have a green button. Oh yeah, the host disabled participants screen sharing, so something needs to happen before I can share anything. Otherwise, I can just tell it.
Yeah, maybe you can start your story, and in the meantime, we will make sure that you can share your screen.
Okay, perfect. Well, good that I'm here. Nice to be here. I will tell you a little bit about my organization. Arcades is a worldwide company. We're specialized in design, engineering, and consultancy for both natural assets and built assets. We are around 30,000 people all over the world. We work in around 70 countries. Then you have a broad idea of the scale that we are working in. And our ambition or purpose is to work on improving the quality of life. And then you will see naturally that working towards sustainable solutions and circular economy fits into that quite naturally. So I was asked to prepare a few topics, one of which is the developments in the market. in recent years, we've seen an increased demand on questions about circularity. And this differs a little bit over different countries. So I connected with a few colleagues of mine over Europe, and then we see that, for example, in the Netherlands, we see a huge increase in questions about sustainability or about circularity. And you see, for example, in Germany, that it has become the biggest field of new requests for real estate purposes. So we work on developing, the questions are about like measurement. How do you measure circularity within buildings or within infrastructure projects? How do we do inventarizations of materials that are within projects or within builds or within existing projects? How do we work with reclamations? Like how can we get materials out of certain projects and put them in new projects? And you also see that there's a shift. I was on a big fair the other day, and there were people that do taxations of buildings. And in circular economy, you also work a lot with new models of ownership. So you go from value creation towards ownership and sharing economy. But how do you value this when you're valuing a building? So how do you value something that you don't own, but that is existing in a built asset? How do you put that into a taxation report? And another one that's more on the technical side that we see a lot coming up is bio-based solutions. So I think Vincent already mentioned it shortly before. Bio-based solutions are contribute to the CO2 emission problem. Like in recent years, we've talked a lot about energy efficiency, which is mostly concerned about the use phase of the building, whereas when you're building an asset, and a lot of resources are used, and to make those resources, materials are needed, but also to make materials, emissions are needed, are made. So bio-based solutions actually do it the other way around, because when a tree, for example, grows, it takes out CO2 out of the air, and then you actually store it into the building. So this is a very an upcoming theme, and how the question is how can we put more bio-based solution into our built assets. So we have a lot of these solutions, but how do you get your feet on the ground? How do you start doing projects? First is learn about what are the possibilities, and where everybody is learning, because it's quite a new topic. So it's also a lot about collaboration, asking partners that might be a few steps ahead of you, and just start collaborating, actually working together, and also just start doing. Internally within Arcadis, we always like to work on projects before we like start building solutions, or we love to start building solutions within projects. But sometimes it's also necessary to go abroad that and go further and start investing in solutions before our clients may ask for it, because we know that's the direction that we're going, and circularity is one of those topics. Then for growing internationally, I see a big challenge in that, because there's a lot of differences in, for example, legislation, which was mentioned before, and also in standard building practices. So what may work in the Netherlands may or may not work in other countries such as Germany or in France, whereas this is could be a barrier, but at the same time it could be a huge chance to learn from each other, because solutions that might be obvious for building practices in another country might come to different solutions than building practices, solutions that are direct to building practices in another country. So we can really learn from each other because the practices are different. And next to that, obviously, when you're talking about local sourcing and local materials, I think it's something that we need to look broader on, not only within the borders of one country, but over the borders, obviously. And I think there is a European market is what I consider as the local market. Next to that, we are talking in this webinar about both building and infrastructure. And what we see is that the ratio between questions and projects and attention for both infrastructure and building sector, it kind of differs per country. So for example, in my colleagues in France, for example, they say, okay, they're by law, by French law, both building sector as infrastructure sector are equally targeted. And for example, in Germany, you see that the solutions are more directed towards building related projects. So there's a bit of a difference between what type of projects get the most attention. I had an image of a project that we were working on around Paris, but I still have no idea if I can share the.
You should be able to share the slide now.
Okay, let me see.
Can I, in the meantime, ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So you mentioned creating solutions before your clients ask for it. So
yeah.
How do they respond to circular solutions they don't necessarily ask for, what you come up with, especially outside of the Netherlands?
Sorry?
Especially outside of the Netherlands.
So I work in the Netherlands, so this idea I mainly see happening in the Netherlands, but what I also know is that the Netherlands is quite advanced in circular solutions. So when it comes to that, you would see that maybe solutions are already developed in one country, for example, in the Netherlands, and then you might be able to apply it to projects in another country. But what I was mainly referring to is that once you're working on sustainability and once you're working on a topic as circularity, you learn about what is possible, you learn about initiatives, maybe smaller initiatives that are developing, and then you kind of make the connection. It's like, okay, that might be the direction that we're going. So you start researching and you start developing. And that curiosity is so important to be able to offer solutions to your clients that they haven't even thought about. And that is what we really need to do. We need to start creating new things and new knowledge so that we can find the right solution fit to a question that a client has or a problem that we're facing in the real world.
And if the specific countries that we're talking about today, could you say something about if you see any of that curiosity also in those countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's curiosity in every country and there's creative entrepreneurs in every country. And that's the reason also why having an open mind and being willing to collaborate is so important, because there's so much knowledge and there's so much creativity and there's so much brain power. But the point is to get that all together so you can work towards the results. But I have no particular country that I feel like, oh, they're doing it in the right way or they have the most creative ideas. I'll show you a little image about, it's a tower around Paris. Let me see. Share screen. Yeah, can you guys see this now? I think so. It's called Tour de Poissonnier, if I say it right. I'm not French.
Can you put it up on full screen? Then we can see. I
tried doing that. Like this one then. That better?
This is better. Yeah, now it's good. Thank you.
I'm gonna put this away. I can't put it away. This, yeah. So this is a building. You see the picture below. That's the building as it is now. It's quite an old tower. It was built late 50s, and they were researching what to do with it. It was not really the most beautiful tower, so they were considering demolishing it, even though it has that still quite nice concrete structure that you could definitely reuse. So the participant for the project, they proposed to reuse the construction and make like a new facade around it, and they also directed towards circular principles. So they tried to reuse a lot of materials, and it ranges from like sanitary facilities to decorative lighting to furniture that was applied in the building. So that's one of the examples that we had, and the whole concept about sharing also is also reflected in the function of the building, because it will be housing for students, young professionals, and PhD students, but also arts residents. And there's a huge component about sharing in the community. So there's joint kitchens, for example, and joint living rooms on a larger scale, and communal areas where everybody can make use of and organize activities. So that's one example that I wanted to show you.
Well, thank you so much, Dingena, for your contribution.
Yeah, I'll try to. Can I stop this now?
Really nice to see a concrete example as well. We quickly proceed with Sustainer, which is a company that offers a building system for circular modular housing in wood. Henry Roberts is head of international projects and partnerships, and he is concerned with finding the right partners and setting them up with a prefab facility running their technology. So Henry, I would love to hear more about your solutions that you offer and how you are getting your feet on the ground in some European countries.
Yeah, thanks. And hi, everyone. Nice to be a part of this webinar. I also have some slides which I can share. Oh, you have them right here. I thought, yeah, so we're quite early in our journey to expand internationally. I think we're less than a year into it. So we have got a little bit of traction, quite a lot of traction, but nothing really official yet. But nevertheless, I think it's nice to share our journey so far and how we've got to where we are. But first, if you go to the next slide, I can show a little bit about what we actually do. So we don't actually build anything. We don't actually design anything. I think the best way to view us is an R&D firm that builds tools for other people to use. So mainly developers and contractors who actually build the buildings. And what we do is we focus on these three core areas. So the building system itself, which is made of wood almost entirely, with some steel connections and very, very little concrete. In fact, only concrete is in the foundations, foundation points as well, not a big slab. It's made of LVL and other wood-based materials, some recycled materials and wall plating. The other thing that we focus on to bring this all together and to ensure a flawless production of buildings that's error-free and reduces waste is the software platform that we've built ourselves. So we work from a database of pre-generated elements that are engineered and tested for all different metrics by our own engineers. And that is how we design the buildings based on designs from architects, which we put through our software, and then it generates a model which factories can use. And then the last part that we focus on is factories. So we set up, or you can view them more as assembly halls. We have one in the Netherlands currently operating now, producing about 500 homes a year. That's going to scale up. We're setting up another one in Belgium, France, possibly in the Baltics and in Denmark. So we're kind of taking this technology, finding the right partners internationally, and then kind of getting them up and running so that they can produce projects for their own markets with our technology. A lot more goes into it than that. There's lots of regulation questions, different environmental concerns for different areas, different climate concerns in terms of how hot or cold it is. But basically, that's what we focus on. Can you go to the next slide, please? Up until now, we've done about 100 private client homes throughout the Netherlands. They range in, from really small things like little bungalows and people's properties into really large villas on the beach. Next slide. And now what we're kind of scaling up quite big, and some of the projects that are coming out of our partners factory are these really big 5,000 square meter apartment blocks, like the one in the middle there. That's going to be in Almere next year, called Zelina. It's got social housing and middle sector and free sector housing in it, so the whole range. We've got some row houses there, classic Dutch brick facade. We've got some more detached houses, and really a big range of things. But what we really see is, I think a lot of other people have touched on this topic before, that Netherlands is really like a hotspot for all of these technologies to be incubated, but we're a small but a very important part of Europe. So what we really want to do at Sustainer is to have as big an impact as possible, and we found the way to do that is to develop ourselves as this R&D company that I mentioned, and spread out the technology to as many different people as we can. Next slide. So we started doing this by doing a general analysis, and I think a lot of these topics have been covered again, but this is just general statistics. There's a lot of incentive internationally, especially in France and Nordics. The market is growing. There is enough wood by some studies, although there is conflicting information there that we need to properly analyze and do good due diligence in our supply chain. And there's the will from the people in the government. So we find it's really ripe for this. Can you go to the next slide? So, and starting off this internationalization, obviously we want to build everywhere, but we have to start somewhere. And so to do this, we sort of created this matrix for ourselves, and we asked ourselves a lot of different questions that relate to how good our technology would be for a particular market, how accepted it would be, and how difficult it would to be breaking in there. And then we put all this into this matrix here. This is all backed up by research, so there's loads and loads of documents supporting this. But then we either gave it a tick, meaning it's good, the little shrugging guy, which means we don't actually know, or we can't find out, or red flag, meaning this isn't an issue, or this isn't going to happen in this country. Next slide. And from that, we distilled a few different countries, but then we figured out how we have to work with these different people, different companies in these different countries, which I think if you're going to go international, you should really figure this out very early on. And it was quite important for us as a technology company, because we don't necessarily fit into the regular process of projects and how they're done throughout Europe. So what we did is this slightly complex looking graph is we mapped out how projects usually go through in a very general level, and then sort of looked at how we can integrate our technology with different parts and different partners. And the next slide. And once we had that figured out, we did a stakeholder analysis for ourselves, and from all those different partners in that little graph that I showed you, we sort of laid them out here, and we saw who the stakeholders from assembly halls, the people actually putting together the modules, the developing contractors, developers, asset owners. And we just kind of made a value proposition for ourselves, what their concerns would be going to be. And then for each country, we mapped out the companies and the people who fit that criteria. And through this, we had a really good set of data of who to contact first internationally to set up these ecosystems of, a developer wants to develop a building, he links up with the architects and the assembly hall that can make it. And through this, we figured out the most important people that we needed to talk to, and kind of what our value proposition was going to be there, so we could properly integrate ourselves in there without going through hundreds and hundreds of emails and back and forth, and no one really responding, because we're really trying to pinpoint how we could help make this transition to sustainable construction. If you go to the next slide now, this is the last one. And the way that we actually reached out to people is through a numerous different means. The embassies, I see there's a few people that I've been in contact with before here already. So from the Nordic embassy. So hello guys. So they were a great help with local knowledge of all the different companies and also networking opportunities. So through the embassy in Sweden, we actually went to Nordbig earlier this year, which is one of the biggest construction fairs in Europe, or in the Nordics at least. And we actually gained a really good contact there, which has led to a potential partnership in the Baltics. The other things are networking groups, so like the NLBC, the Netherlands Business Council in France, which was actually a connection through the French embassy. LinkedIn searches are always good, and personal connections and events and so on, events such as this. So yeah, that's how we got to where we are now. We did this a lot of background research and then honed in on our our value proposition and then started executing. So
thank you so much for taking us through the journey that you're still going through.
Yeah.
Could you maybe, I hear that you're already in contact with some of the embassy, which is really nice to hear that went so well. But can you also talk a little bit about the barriers that you experience when looking over the border?
I think first is the language barrier. Obviously myself being English speaking as a mother tongue, I'm lucky that is the connecting language between a lot of people. So never assume anything like that, which leads to another cultural barrier. Sometimes people are more hierarchical in their companies, so you have to approach the right person, and you have to enter the company in the right way. But sometimes you just have to find the right person. So that can really be a barrier if you're trying to contact the wrong person about setting up a partnership in a company. It can put you back months if you're not careful about it. So I think it's really analyzing the culture and the people, and then being very tactical about your approach. Okay,
thank you for that tip. Do you have any other tips for entrepreneurs that also trying to get their feet on the ground? For instance, you mentioned Belgium and France you're already active in or will be active in soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a network of advisors is really good. So for Belgium, we had help from Guido Bram, who is actually, I believe, one of the founders of the Holland Circular Hotspot. So that was really, really helpful to have his advice and his knowledge and networks. Yeah, and just ask for help. I think it sounds really basic, but it's really, at the end of the day, you have to ask people who are professionals in the region for help. And also, when you're starting to get to the point where you are actually implementing your product or service or technology, getting local expertise to help out, especially for us with actually wanting to, in the end, build physical buildings, residential architecture, having someone with local knowledge of regulations and fire acoustics, structural stability, and so on. That's really, really valuable to know early on.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. Please stay on for possible questions from the participants in the chat or later in the Q&A. For now, I quickly proceed to the local perspectives that we collected for you today from France, from Belgium, from the UK, and from the Nordics. The next speaker is here representing our sister hotspot in France, Auray, but I see it's not. So we just proceed with Terence. I'm really happy to have Terence here today as well, of course. He's from the Netherlands Embassy in the United Kingdom. And he's a senior attaché at the Netherlands there. Currently very actively working on the topic of circular construction. So I'm very interested to hear what he has to share. Terence has no slides, so it would be nice to just see Terence in the
screen. Yes, thank you, Terence. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie, and well, good to be in this webinar today. Very inspiring and good to hear more about what is happening also from a company perspective, and we'll really hope to inspire all of you with your international ambitions. So Stephanie, you already talked a little bit about the difference in wording. That's something indeed that we see in the UK. Perhaps before I'll go into a fact sheet that we have recently produced, I want to highlight a few points. Let me just quickly give an overview of where things stand at the moment for circular economy. So in the UK, it's a little bit of a different country because you have a so-called default administration. What it means is that on a policy level, this already differs. So if you look at England, it has a different strategy compared to Scotland or Wales. So in England, there's been more of a focus on what they call resource efficiency, a little bit related to waste management, whereas in Scotland and Wales, they both have a national circular economy strategy. So that already determines the landscape. And perhaps, well, this you might ask, well, is there really no any investments being made available? There actually is. Circular economy is becoming more of part of the agenda now. There has been recently an investment of £22.5 million to 5 circular economy centers. These are mostly driven by research from universities. I won't go into all details of them, but given the nature of this event, I think it is good to highlight the Center for Mineral-Based Construction Materials. Well, it's they do a lot of research, and so perhaps there are some interesting points to consider. And these centers also support SMEs, mostly British SMEs, I should mention. So what you really see is on the regional level, there's more, circular economy is more embraced. So if you look at cities like London, Glasgow, Brighton, they all have a national or a local circular economy strategies. And this is something that also translates into a push from private organizations, from think tanks to really embrace circular concepts, but I'll go into a little bit more detail later. I'm also a bit conscious of time, so I'll try to keep it short. Perhaps a little bit about this fact sheet. It was recently produced. I think it will also be sent into the chat, so please do have a look. Basically, this fact sheet is meant to give an overview of circular economy in the UK. It's a high-level overview. 3 sectors are highlighted. So next to construction, it's waste management and manufacturing. And what's interestingly enough, I think that for both or for all 3 sectors, yeah, it gives an overview of some of the investments that are being made, and also about some events that you are able to attend. So please do have a look at it. Perhaps just to go into construction itself. The construction sector is vital to the UK economy because it is one of the largest sectors and a key source of employment. However, in the past, it has suffered from low levels of investment, an insufficient focus on a move towards net zero emissions, and also not enough modernization of skills and innovation. And well, the pandemic has also not really helped in the sense that it has further hampered any workforce that has been reduced, and issues that has been created with supply chains. Nevertheless, there has been a national infrastructure and construction pipeline. It sets out a pipeline of investments that totals almost £650 billion. And this investment will be delivered over the next decade and will be spread across regions, cities, towns, communities. So if you look at the UK construction industry, it is known to be risk averse and slow to innovate. At the same time, health and safety are important priorities. It remains a top priority, so perhaps there are also some opportunities in that sense to share any best practices or have a knowledge exchange. So circular economy is emerging as a key topic, driven by rising material and construction costs and resource scarcity. And as I mentioned, it's really a bottom-up approach. So it's mostly driven by organizations like trade associations. You have the UK Green Building Council, you have the Green Construction Board, and there has also been more of a push from architects and engineers who are increasingly focusing on reuse of existing assets, modular approaches, design for flexibility and ease of maintenance. So these are some points to consider. As already mentioned, indeed, the wording can also really help. Things, wording such as greening construction works much better than circular, although there has been a little bit of a push for more circular terminology. Maybe just a final point about the events and networks. The UK is a true networking country, so it really helps to be present, go to trade fairs, make new contacts. It will take some time to build that relationship. Perhaps you have to go multiple times, but once that trust has been built, then it will definitely help to seize opportunities here in the UK. And well, just to give you an example, Future Build is a large construction expo that also really has a big focus on sustainability, where there's a lot of room for circular business models to showcase what they have to offer. That will take place in March. There are also other events. If you'd like to know more about these events and how to start your approach in the UK, please do feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terence. Very interesting, and I would believe that there are many questions for more information about everything that you're working on at the moment. For now, I have to proceed quickly to the next speaker, but thank you so much for your contribution. And if you look in the chat, everyone here, you will see the country page of UK, and there's also quite some interesting information on it, on circular economy, business opportunities, but also the latest and most relevant links to publications can be found there. So for now, I would like to introduce the next two speakers, actually, because we have here today Heiman van Praag and Marcus Colliers, and together they are the regional business development team of the Nordics and the Baltics. I would like to give you the floor. Please be aware that we have only time for highlights and enthusiasts, the people here today, to dive into more information about the country. So please take the floor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Well, I'll try to be brief and go through the slides, because we prepared a bit for the participants to show. Yes, we are part of the regional business development team, but we also have Margot Rose in the Baltics, and that makes us 3. Next slide, please. Why the Nordics and Baltics? Well, you can read it if you like, but there are many arguments why we are present here in this region. Geopolitical developments recently, climate change, definitely. And we think this region, or we see that this region is, well, you can compare it to the Netherlands. It's highly developed, stable, considering its politics and economics. Innovation is very high. We are like-minded. We have close history with some countries. And of course, the region is very accessible. In the long term, we see that cooperating in this region might end up to better entry to the non-European markets. And we even think that, well, since we have climate change and the region in the south of Europe is becoming hotter and hotter, there might be even kind of a migration towards the northern parts of Europe. Next slide, please. Well, we hear the question like, okay, how can you succeed? Well, in this region, we always say we have 5 P's. Professionalism, you have to be professional. You have to make a very good first impression. You have to take, you have to choose for the right strategic picks. You have to go into partnerships. You have to promote. You have to be here, but you certainly have to need to have patience and perseverance. Next slide, please. Well, our daily work of our team consists of many things. Actually, we're not so much into business development per se, so we are not focusing so much on creating more welfare for the Netherlands, but more well-being for the world. We do it at 3 levels: strategically, tactically, and on the operations. So we do organize activities ourselves. We provide services to create short and longer term results for companies. We work very closely here in the region with the public sector, but also with knowledge institutions and of course private partners, companies. Yes, we work regionally. That means that when we see opportunities in more than one country for, let's say, one sector or subsector or maybe a theme, we are very eager to look and see if we can develop a certain program. And that means that coming to the region is not a one-off. If we organize something, it's not a one-off activity, but it's part of a longer program. And what we also do is that we say, well, you know, since we are more into business innovation, we always serve the countries here in the region also to come to the Netherlands. Next slide, please. Why sustainable building? Well, I think that you already explained, Stephanie, before. Of course, it's a very good reason to be here. If we can innovate and if we can reduce CO2 emissions, or not only CO2 emissions, but also other harmful emissions, and we can create circularity, then with partners within this region, you can also try to enter markets outside of Europe. And of course, through that, we can create a more healthy planet. Next slide, please. I would like to give the floor to Marcus, my colleague in Gothenburg.
Thank you, Hyman. Hello, everybody. I'll be very quick because I realize we're short of time, but I wanted to mention, in addition to what Hyman's been talking about, the market studies that were produced at the end of last year on sustainable building in Scandinavian countries, namely Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. These market studies are available to download, and you will get the links for those following this presentation. Unfortunately, I haven't got them on my head, so I can't put them in the chat straight away, but we'll make sure we get them to you. And I'd like to present to you very briefly some of the general trends and developments that were identified in these reports. So Sweden and Denmark were done as one report, and then a follow-up report was done for Norway. Firstly, for Sweden, as indicated here on the slide, there are large projects underway to increase the number of homes that are being built in Sweden, and there's a large focus on making them as sustainable as possible. 600,000 new homes will be needed in the next 10 years, but the pace of development is not fast enough to keep up with demand. So there are opportunities there for companies to enter the market. At the same time, there is a need for much of the existing stock, particularly housing that was built during the 60s and 70s, to be renovated. At least a quarter of these million dwellings that were produced during that time need for larger renovations. However, the Swedish market is dominated by 3 very large project developers. Each of them is at least 3 times larger, if not more, than the nearest competitor. And that's probably one of the reasons why Sweden has some of the highest construction costs in the EU. If we go to the next slide, in Denmark, the general trends there that you can see that as many countries in Europe, there's an aging population, and the government has put in place funding schemes and design requirements to ensure the housing and healthcare facilities reflect new demographics. A second trend is that the renovation requirements from existing stock, in particular social housing sector, is taken into account. And a third area is there's a general lack of skills, which is one of the most important barriers for construction companies experiencing shortages, mainly in the areas of carpentry, bricklaying, and plumbing. And finally, there are challenges around productivity, as there has been a general lack of investment into new technology and funds for training, even though Denmark is seen as a front runner in implementing BIM modeling in the construction process. Before I come on to Norway, I'll just summarize then for those 2 markets that, of course, sustainability is the strong focus, and it can be summarized in the fact that it's a focus on circular and climate neutral buildings, renewable energy systems, user-centered design, and using digitalization to enable sustainability in the sector. When it comes to circular and climate neutral buildings, the focus tends to be on the reuse of materials. However, the broader concept of circular buildings is now getting more attention. The next slide, please. My final slide, we talk about Norway. The general trends and developments are similar to those in Denmark and Sweden. The investment in construction has started to stagnate, although it's still at a very high level. There is an increase in the amount of work being done in renovating existing stock, and 30% of all investments are renovations. The country has ambitious policies to limit the impact of construction on the environment. The construction industry currently produces 15% of greenhouse emissions, 40% of the energy use, 40% of the resources, and 20% of all waste. So there's a good opportunity to improve. The ambition is for the country to become climate neutral by 2050. And as an example, Oslo wants to be climate neutral by 2030. However, there are other issues as well, such as construction costs being still very high and a low number of players. Again, sustainability is focused in areas such as circularity and resource use, renewable energy systems, and not so much as in the other 2 countries. So in conclusion, there are similar challenges and opportunities across the Nordic countries. In Denmark, there is more focus on measuring indoor well-being and currently more direct opportunities within energy renovation. In Sweden, a large focus on construction, including using wood, and a need for higher productivity, covering both the residential and public buildings. And in Norway, there is more focus on circular construction, less on renewable energy systems, and challenges on the construction sites, such as making them emission-free as quickly as possible, is very important also in Norway. So that's it from me. Please remember the market studies are available to download, and we'll send you those links. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Marcus and Heiman, for this contribution. I already mentioned in the chat, please ask your questions if you have questions for Heiman and Marcus, also for the other representatives, of course. But also let them know if you want to get in touch. You already heard from Henry. They're a pretty good team to help you get your feet on the ground. For now, I have to proceed quickly to Belgium. And we have here with us today Willemijn Brakenhoff. Also, at the moment, really active on the topic of circular construction. So Willemijn, I would like to give you the floor. We have 10 minutes, 2 more speakers. So I would like to ask you to keep the time in mind. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Stephanie, for the introduction. So warm welcome to all the participants of this webinar. I'm honored to give you some insights on the market potential in circular building sector in Belgium. The upcoming minutes, I was told to give it very short, which means I only will highlight some context and the most important opportunities in Belgium. Next slide, please. So my name is Willemijn Brakenhoff and I'm commercial attaché at the Dutch Embassy in Brussels. So please let's connect via LinkedIn so we can continue our dialogue afterwards by scanning the QR code in the screen. Next slide, please. So to start, I would like to share some facts to explain the relevance of our neighboring markets. So Belgium is the second trade partner for the Netherlands with an export value of 62 million euros. These are numbers of 2021. The Flemish region shares the EU Green Deal ambition to completely circular by 2050. And as known, the building sector is nowadays responsible for a third of our water use, 50% of our energy consumption, and 40% of the CO2 emissions. So this means cross-border cooperation makes it easier to accelerate the transition to in the lower countries. Next slide, please. And to be able or to tap in those opportunities, private and public partners collaborate in multi-annual program on circular economy. The partners are showcases on the slide, and within this partnership we are able to identify new market opportunities, bring networks together and organize trade missions for different sectors. For example, we did last May, we did a mission on circular sustainable infrastructure and circular building sector. This was led by Minister Liesje Schrijnemacher, as well as Flemish Minister Zoel de Mier, for a 2-day program with 80 participants from the Netherlands. So it was a great success, actually. Next slide, please. And as part of our multi-annual strategy, Witteveen and Bos and Rebel consultants recently carried out 2 market studies on the market opportunities in the infrastructure, which was carried out by Witteveen and Bos, and building sector, which was carried out by Rebel. And both studies provide an in-depth analysis on Belgium's context and showcases also private and public investments, which will lead to future assignments. And additionally, current tenders are also included in those reports, as well as a list of the main actors active in both sectors. We heard a network of the locals are one of the key points to have success in the neighboring countries as well. So that's quite relevant to know. Next slide, please. Respecting the time for this presentation, for the residential and non-residential building sector, we identified some interesting developments. And based on the study of Rebel consultants, we can conclude that Antwerp, Mechelen, Leuven, Ghent and Brussels are frontrunners in a transition towards a circular building sector. Their policy includes higher circular standards, for example, emphasizing the importance of including circular parameters in tenders. And besides that, the cities are realizing or will be realizing different pilot projects. And within these 2 regions, we are mentioned, we identify market opportunities for different specialisms in the building sector. So the first market opportunity is related to renovation, knowing that 90% of the buildings of 2050 already exist. So Belgium is facing a major renovation challenge. Brussels only itself has the ambition to triple the renovation rate before 2050, and therefore invest 30 million euros via the program Revolution. And in this challenge, there is a focus on, challenge overall on renovation is focused on small scale renovation. Because I have to mention in this context, it's good to know that the ownership of residential buildings in Belgium is different from the Netherlands. The percentage of private homeowners is much higher in Belgium than in the Netherlands. And there's no such a concept like housing corporations in Belgium, like we know in the Netherlands. So this brings the difficulty how to upscale the renovation rate related to private housing, especially. And actors in Belgium are looking for solutions to be able to realize collective renovations in this sense. A second opportunity I would like to highlight in this presentation is opportunity which is related to the topic of urban development in historical cities. Belgium is known for beautiful historic city centers. However, with the ambition to renovate these buildings as well, new challenges are coming up. The buildings are most of the time classified as protected heritage, or the construction itself isn't easy to disassemble, or the buildings are not in line with today's building norms, for example, energy efficiency or the height of ceilings, square meters, etc. And to be able to renovate these historical entities, these are looking for sustainable solutions, which often means they are looking for companies who are specialized in realizing this renovation in historical entities. So it's very customized. And a third I would like to highlight is the investment of the EU, 1 million in Belgium social housing, which future assignments will follow. Next slide, please. And one of today's tenders I would like to highlight in this presentation and will be open for application soon is the case of Molens van Orshoven in Silo's in the city center of Leuven. This is an industrial area which will be completely or has to be completely redeveloped, including housing facilities as well as office spaces and space for leisure. And for the redevelopment, Leuven is looking for international suppliers, architects, and other contractors. So we would love to link you to the contact point of that project in Leuven, if you would like to. Next slide, please. And this is actually in a nutshell for the minutes I got. There were only some highlights. There are much more opportunities going on in these sectors. But if you would like to read our market study I mentioned in this presentation, or would like to know more about our events, our missions, our projects, please subscribe via the form. You can scan the QR code and leave your contact details behind. And then we will send you the studies afterwards by email. And next slide, please. Then I hope to welcome you in Belgium and got the possibility to introduce you to our network to facilitate beautiful partnerships for the future.
Thank you so much, Willemijn, and also the tender that you just mentioned. We might be able to share it for you, give it some visibility in the network. Thank you so much. If you can all stay for a couple more minutes, we have one more speaker, and I would also like to ask the embassy or the speakers from the countries one little question to end the webinar with. For now, I would like to introduce you to Arnaud Humbert Droz. I hope I pronounce it right, but I'm probably not. But still, you're very welcome. I'm happy to have you here. You're representing our sister hotspot in France, Auray, but you're also the executive director of Valdelia, company. I'm really interested to hear more about what you can tell us about the French market for circular construction.
Yeah, I'm sorry because I am in the road for the time, and I will be very quick on the presentation. You can send it. What you have to know is that in France we have a new regulation, because in French we are a special people and we love regulation, and we will start the new way of circular economy in building system in the 1st of January of 2023, and it's very quick for us. And what it will change in your perception of the French market? You have to know that this new regulation will put in the market a new contribution for the producers, and the producers of different building construction systems will have to be a part of this money to build a producer responsibility systems. And my company and other company, we are 4 companies for that, we will have to help all the manufacturers to make building more circular. For this, we will have 4 type of action. The first one is to help you in the new challenge of this regulation, to be sure that you are in a legal way with this regulation. The second way is to increase the part of reuse products in the construction, and for this we will make a lot of projects about reuse, and we will start with collecting product for reuse, and we will go to put them on the new building. After, we have to work on research and development to be sure that all the product we will collect, all the end-of-life product we will collect, will be recycled. And for this, we will make a lot of programs to be sure that you can use these raw materials. And at the end, we will help you on what we call in France eco-conception, to be sure that your products will be circular in the future and will be easy, for example, to collect and to use. For this, it's a very big revolution in France market, because we will start to increase the part of
No, your connection is really bad. I think that the last part was not, no one was able to hear it probably. Could you repeat the last 2 sentences, please?
Maybe shut off your camera. We love to see you, but maybe without the camera we can get a better connection.
I'm really sorry, Arno, but we really can't understand what you're saying. Would it be a good idea to share your slides afterwards?
Yeah. Just,
can we try and ask you
perhaps just to be sure, oh, sorry for that, but because I have a good connection, but yeah, that's I do.
Okay.
From here. Oh, the better. Look, I will send you the presentation, because I don't know if you got it, but I don't know if you hear me very nice. But the most important thing, it's that we have a new regulation, and look, we can help you to be sure you are in the good way with this regulation. And don't worry, ask us, and we will help you to be still in the French market.
So Arno, I want to ask for all the countries actually, about the lowest hanging construction fruit in the region. Where would you put your money if you would?
Oh, the money is coming from the special, it's like a tax, you know, that it's very clear.
But if you could choose, what would you say is the best thing to invest in at the moment, looking at circular construction? Is there something that's really low-hanging fruit in France at the moment, which is really?
Yeah, you can come. Yeah, it's a big opportunity for you because we will help you to with a special project, for example, in recycling way, and for using a raw material in your production. We can help you because we have the money for that. We have the obligation with the regulation. This is an EPR regulation, and we have to help the producer to grow up in the circular economy.
Now, thank you very much. Please send me the slides afterwards. We don't have them at the moment, so we can share them with the participants, and we can find the highlights for France in it.
Yeah.
For now, before we close the webinar, I would like to ask also to the UK, to Belgium, and to the Nordics, what the lowest hanging fruit in your region is, looking at circular construction. Can we maybe start with the Nordics? Do you have a clear idea of what opportunity we just can't leave there? We really have to pick it now.
Well, if I may say, one thing that was not mentioned yet is that, of course, entrepreneurs will always look and see what the market is in the Netherlands and what the international market is. And I think what is a strong difference between the Netherlands market and the markets here in the region is that here in the region there is much less there are much less problems with the topic of nitrogen. So it could be very possible that companies from the Netherlands choose for this region, since there are too many obstructions in the coming years to build and create something like sustainable buildings or sustainable infrastructure. Even when it's sustainable, the fact is, if it's 100% sustainable or not. If it's not, then you still have a problem. So I would say that's definitely a low-hanging fruit, to my opinion, for a Dutch entrepreneur coming to this region. And I can only say that through the programmatic approach that we have, well, I cannot promise success for everyone, but it surely proves that if you're patient and if you have perseverance, then in the end, with the mission that we all have in this world to become more circular and sustainable, this is a very, very interesting region, and I expect much more from this region in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Heiman. Terence, would you like to add something about the UK?
Well, I think it's a little bit really
Terence, I don't hear you. You're probably muted or something else is happening.
I hear a lot of noise.
Yes, can everyone who's not speaking at the moment turn off their microphone? Thank you. Yes, this might help. What would you say is the low-hanging fruit for circular construction in the UK?
Yes, thank you. I hope I'm much more audible now. So yeah, low-hanging fruit, I think it's a little bit difficult to really pinpoint it at this point in time. Really depends on the regional levels, but I think yeah, just to be practical about it, go to the UK, go to those trade fairs. There are loads coming up. So I already mentioned Future Build is one that is in March. London Build is another one that typically takes place in November. And we're always willing to see how we can help. So please do get in touch if you have a great idea about how you'd like to engage with the UK audience. And then, well, we'll see if we can contribute to the expansion in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Terence. Willemijn, what would you say is the low-hanging fruit in Belgium?
Yeah, for Belgium, it's definitely the renovation challenge. There are a lot of tenders coming up in that sense, and as well as the investments, which leads to future assignments. So the renovation challenge amongst residential and non-residential buildings, I would like to suggest.
Thank you, Willemijn. Thank you, Terence. Thank you, Heiman. Thank you, Marcus. I think he's already gone now, but thank you, Arno. Thank you, Henry, Jessica, Vincent, of course. And of course, Dingena. Thank you so much for your contribution. I think that we heard today that there is happening a lot on this topic in the different countries. Today, we were only able to touch upon the highlights. There's much more information available. There are many links in the chat. I would, like to ask you to check the links, contact us, contact one of the persons that you heard speaking today for more information. And please keep in touch because much more is about to happen in this field. And I hope that we can do it all together. Thank you very much for being here and until the next time.